everyone. Welcome to This Day. It is Friday and it is June 11th. We don't have any meetings to tell you about today, so we'll just jump to who's on our show. Now, we do have a United update from Manny Almendarez, and then we have a visit from Dr. Huang, who is with Kaiser Permanente. And great information today, so stick around. All right, let's take a look at our weather real quick. We are looking at some pretty warm temperatures coming up here. Today, we are looking at a high of 79, 59. Then on Saturday, we are looking at 82, 61, low clouds, then sunshine. Sunday, 83, 62, and Monday, our heat wave begins with a high of 88. Overnight 67, and it's going to be very hot on Tuesday, 92, 69. If you are traveling in the state of California today, our local temperatures are looking fantastic. 74, 61 at the beaches. Santa Barbara, 74, 61. San Diego, 74, 63. Tahoe, a pleasant 73, 45. Big Bear, 80, 43. And Mammoth, 75, 40. Palm Springs 109, 78, but it's cooler in Vegas with a 107, 75. Go figure. All right, our sunrise this morning was at 5:40 and our sunset will be at 8:01, and this is one of the photos that I took off the internet showing what the solar eclipse looked like yesterday in the state of New York. All right, if you have a photo you'd like to share, then send it to Laguna Woods Village TV at gmail.com. All right, it's Friday and it's time for our fun fact, so take a look.
Dental health is important, and it can be tough to find the best fit for your needs. Flora Stenger General and Specialty Dental Practice covers most of my dental needs in one location. Their on-staff specialists provide seamless services and communication between me, my doctors, and my insurance company. Located right down the road from Laguna Woods, our bus service stops right in front of their building. For the first time, I'm getting the dental care I need with the treatment I deserve. And my dental health has never been better. Call and book your first appointment today. I'm glad I did.
Welcome back. Well, today I am joined by Manny Almendarez, who is here on behalf of United. Well, Manny, thank you for joining me. Nice to see you.
Lisa, it's my pleasure to be here like always, and I hope I can inform our members of what's going on. Thank you.
Well, you guys always do a really good job of informing us, and you have a lot of items on your list. But most importantly, let's talk about what is the most important thing on United Mutual's, meeting from the last time that you guys got together.
I believe the major accomplishment we did at this last meeting was to pass a resolution to bring us in compliance with Code Section 5515. And that code requires that it does allow borrowing by the operating fund from reserves. However, there's a protocol you must follow to do that. And United has been doing this for years without following the protocol. So we had a meeting in May, which was the first reading. And in that meeting, in following the protocol, we announced the meeting. We identified the subject to be covered. And it also requires that in the resolution you identify the amount to be borrowed, what the funds are to be used for, how the funds are to be paid back, and what the source of those funds will be. And as I said before, this is the first time this has come before the board, although it's been happening. At the time of the May meeting, the latest financial report that we've seen was for March. And that showed that the amount of that at that time was a little over $6 million. So that resolution contains 6.1 million in it. Unfortunately, some directors and a number of members were all upset over that because first they thought this was an additional authorization above what was already borrowed. And also they were going to set the source of repayment there to cover that.
Mhm.
So in the May meeting, and the Globe has this a little bit wrong, it refers to a correction. It's not a correction. It's that for the June meeting, the latest financial statement showed that the amount still owed and paid down was still over $4 million. However, VMS finance staff through June had projected that the loan balance would be down to under $1.3 million. So in the second resolution, 1.3 was approved. I hope my comments clarify all that confusion. That was passed unanimously at the second meeting, and we accomplished a good thing. We've now set a precedent that must be followed every time, and hoping that this is not a regular occurrence. But if it does happen again, they have to go through this whole process, identify that specific amount, and have a board meeting like we did this last time. That was a major accomplishment.
Yeah, well, and you know, as you mentioned, those numbers are pretty significantly different, and so obviously you want to make sure everybody's on the same page with that. So good job on that one for sure. Now, another important issue is that you have an assembly bill that you want to talk about.
Yes, this came up. This was passed in 2000 and became effective January 2021. I meant for 2020. It was passed. Became effective January 2021. And it changed the subletting rules for HOAs. And prior to now, before the bill was passed, the amount of subletting in any senior communities was limited to 20%. Has now been increased to 25% of the units. Also, in addition to that, United had a rule where you could not sublet your unit until near after close of escrow on it. And a lot of times that was misinterpreted. Since the intent of that was to get the resident to, the member to move into the unit, a lot of times that was interpreted to mean that you had to move in. That was not true. You just had to own it. That no longer is required. And the other thing is that prior to now, if you sublet your unit, you could not sublet it for shorter than 90 days. The new rule now is that you can sublet the unit for 30 days. And this all brought about a change in the occupancy agreement, which is a very important governing document. And that agreement has come up in a couple of meetings recently. And the director noticed that one of the article headings was incorrect. Article 7 said subletting prohibited, and that has now been corrected to say subletting conditionally permitted. Okay. So we think we're now totally compliant with the changes required by AB 3182.
Oh, okay, great. Now subletting, is it popular?
Yes, it's more popular in Third than it is in United. We have 6,323 units. United, Third has a little over 6,000. And my understanding in United is we have about 8% of the units that are let. Whereas, and the difference here is that the members in United are shareholders of the corporation. So they inhabit their units under a lease. So when they lease a unit out, it's a sublease. In Third, they own their co-ops or their condos or single family homes. So they would be leasing their unit. In Third, I understand the units that they lease are up around 2%. So using a figure of 6,000, that's around 1,200 units. Yeah. In Third, if my 8% is accurate, then that's less than 500 units. So it's quite a difference between the two, but I'd say that they're both pretty popular.
Okay, all right. And then you guys also have a potential policy that was discussed about social media.
Oh yes, that's a tough one. That was brought about because we got opposed thinking by a lot of the directors. Some directors are very much in favor of it. Other directors are pretty opposed to it.
Mhm.
And so it was a very difficult issue to work through. And some people are going to be unhappy that it failed, it did not pass. Other directors will be happy that it passed. And the reason that is because the intent of the policy was well-meaning. We have some directors that report to social media and either distort the facts or have an agenda that is not favorable for the community or for the mutual.
Mhm.
And that was in a to try to curb some of that. Unfortunately, the problem with that is that it had too many restrictions, and I was not in favor of it for the simple reason that I'm a retired CPA and I think I know how to state facts and stick to the truth. And I didn't like my ability to communicate restricted.
Yes, yes.
So it failed. It was a close vote. It was a tie vote. You need a majority in order for it to pass. And I think you're going to hear a lot of controversy about it, you know, in favor of it and against it. So that's what I have to report on that issue.
Yeah, and you know, it's not just the village that has that issue, it's nationwide. I mean, we all live on social media, and you can either take the opinions or not, but you do need to inform yourself to get the facts.
Very good. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so I can see how that would be very controversial, but nonetheless, don't you think something good came out of that though? I mean, people are now aware that it's a concern.
Yes. I'm glad you said that, because even the directors that were opposed to it, it reminded them of how important it is to state the facts, not to have a personal agenda, just to make members aware of what's going on, what the board of directors are trying to accomplish.
Right.
They're not always right, they're not always successful, but they're doing the best you can.
Yeah.
And that's the responsibility of the directors. Tell the truth and get the information to the members. Yes, that I think that will be a benefit from this.
Perfect. And one last item is you guys have increased some maintenance opportunities.
Yes, this is good news, I think, to a lot of members. We have 2 lists of maintenance services that are provided by the our maintenance department. One of them is work that the mutual is responsible for, certain maintenance items, such as if your sewer line gets, call it your waste line, gets plugged, they'll come out and clear it for you, no cost. But there are other services, excuse me, that respond to the member. And they added 8 items, excuse me, they added 8 items to provide more convenience to the member. 2 of them that I can remember off the top of my head is, one is they'll replace bulbs inside the unit, which a lot of times are difficult for members to do. And they'll also provide the bulb, but there is a charge for that because that's the responsibility of the member.
Okay.
Another item is that sometimes members want to place their kitchen doors, not their bathroom doors or the bedroom doors. And again, here, as a convenience to maintenance and construction will do that, but there is a charge for that. And also the member must provide the door or pay for the door. So those are good news. And the Globe had a good article in the paper about that, and it lists the 8 items. That is just a range because it will depend on the type of manner and the amount of work involved, but pretty close to that range quoted.
Oh, okay. And what did they have to do before that was on the list? Did they have to go to outside sources?
Yes, before that, they either had to hire some outside contractor that did that. And then we started a handyman program for a while, but it was very favorably accepted. The problem was that it was costing the mutual more than they were deriving their revenues.
Okay.
So we continued that. We were losing a lot of money from that. We have one available now, but it's through an outside source. So members can utilize that, but for these 8 items, the mutual can do it for them at a certain price.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you guys were able to add some services for everybody. Well, thank you so much for the update. I appreciate it.
I'd like to end on a really positive note, and that's to say that in the meeting, Jeff Parker disclosed some very information, very pleasant. the opening up of the village, and the members be more ready to welcome that. So that was great news. And I know you've been covering it on a TV, which is great. So I want to thank you and Jeff for the good job you're doing on that.
Oh, thank you very much. And, cross your fingers that, June comes and goes without any issues.
Very good. Well said.
Okay. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And we'll be right back after this.
Why do I love being a doctor at Kaiser Permanente?
My only job is to take great care of my patients. I'm empowered to do what's right for you.
Our digital records mean your medical history is in one place, so I can give you great care.
Your primary care doctor, your specialists. It's great. We all work together as one team.
Our integrated approach to healthcare helps my patients live longer, healthier lives.
I don't just practice here, I'm a patient too. I wouldn't trust my family's healthcare to anyone else.
Welcome back. Well, today I am joined by Dr. James Huang, who is here on behalf of Kaiser Permanente, Orange County. Well, Dr. Huang, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Lisa. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. Now, of course, off camera, we were discussing arthritis and how most of us at a certain age are just like, I don't have arthritis. I'm not suffering from that. And I know that you probably hear a lot about that. Especially with sports medicine, because, we have a lot of active people and we're out and about and we don't like to admit these things. So before we get actually into the sports medicine part, let's talk about specifically osteoarthritis. And can you tell me what that is, versus regular arthritis?
Sure. So, a lot of times when we talk about osteoarthritis, it's really a chronic degenerative condition where our cartilage breaks down in our joints. And when you look at arthritis in general, it's a general term that basically talks about inflammation or a condition that affects our joints. So it's really all from the Greek there. And osteon basically means bone. And then the arthron, or arthritis part, is basically joints. And then itis is inflammation. So it's basically inflammation and breakdown of the cartilage in our joints. And it really affects all of us as time goes on. And, they always talk about Father Time winning. Well, he usually does. And that unfortunately is something that we deal with. And that's basically arthritis, which is that chronic degenerative condition where our cartilage breaks down in our joints over time. And that can lead to other symptoms that we always complain about, a lot of the stiffness and pain. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because, for instance, just the other day, I was talking to somebody about how hips can bother us from different types of, maybe sleeping or activity that you've been doing. But it really is kind of a strange ache. It's not really a pain. It's more like an ache. Is that kind of a symptom?
It is. It's very interesting because some of the hallmarks, some of the things we ask our patients when we start to suspect arthritis is, are you getting a lot of aching? And that aching typically happens after a long day of activity or with excess activity. And then the other thing that typically comes along with it is stiffness. And especially after you've been active for a bit, you sit down, you cool down, 20 minutes later, you start to get up and you get very stiff. It takes a moment to start going again. And that's very much a hallmark of some of that osteoarthritis that we discuss. But certainly aching can be part of it. On occasion, if you overdo it, it can be sharp pains. And, that's also a hallmark of it. But most times my patients come in and say, I have this aching that's kind of present all the time along with stiffness. And then we start to go down that road of osteoarthritis.
So once someone has come in and they are, complaining about those very things that we were just talking about, what do you do next?
Sure. So usually after we ask those questions, we typically will do a physical exam. A lot of times with osteoarthritis, because you have a degeneration of the cartilage, you're talking about joint spaces, the space between the bones, and you have a range of motion. You start to lose a lot of that. So as we examine you, we'll notice that as we get to the end ranges, you start to get pain. And a lot of that time means that you've lost that range of motion. We'll also take a look sometimes if it's a weight-bearing joint, the way you're walking. Sometimes there's a limp. There's something we call an antalgic gait, which is that limp and it's different type of walking because you're sort of compensating. And then, of course, an X-ray. An X-ray is really great to look at the space between the joint or the bones, and that lets us know the severity of the osteoarthritis that we're dealing with.
So an X-ray versus an MRI.
Yes. So, X-rays are really great at looking at the bones as well as the joint space, whereas MRIs can be very useful. A lot of times we look at soft tissue, and when you're dealing with a joint that's sort of aching or has pain without any trauma or fall, then we have a lot less suspicion that we have a ligament tear or an acute injury that's going to cause damage to that type of cartilage. Instead, we're really looking at wear and tear of the joint, and that's where the X-ray is really, really useful.
Okay. Now here's an interesting question for you. And with cell phones, right?
Yes.
So we all have cell phones, and we're constantly like holding our hand.
Sure.
Like this, right? Have you noticed anybody come in lately or commonly with aches in their fingers or hands because of our phones?
Very much so. It actually also started even with certain game consoles with the Wii, where people were swinging their arms around. And, if you have arthritis, which is most commonly at the CMC joint, right where the base of the thumb is, certain gripping motions can really aggravate it. And the other thing I also see is a lot of arthritis of the neck. And so we're sort of in this crouched position looking at our phones, and that can exacerbate that as well. And, it's certainly kind of the sign of our times where, the phones can aggravate. And then, of course, heavy gripping. And a lot of times we're gripping that phone in one hand. So we do see that as well.
Now, obviously, you're part of the sports medicine group that I mentioned. And so you probably see tons of people with this other issue because you are gripping, right? You have tennis and pickleball and all the, all the different sports.
Yes.
You notice, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. That's certainly something we see quite a bit. And so a lot of times that can be osteoarthritis. Sometimes it could be tendonitis because of the overuse of gripping. And a lot of our sports involve that gripping. And so it's very common.
Right. So how do you treat things like this? I mean, do you take medication? Are there supplements people should take into consideration?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of times, medications can work very well, especially if it's an occasional thing. It's not all the time. Typically, Tylenol is a really good start, especially if you don't have any liver issues. Tylenol typically doesn't have as many side effects. It won't affect your stomach or kidneys like some of these anti-inflammatories like Motrin or Aleve can, although Motrin and Aleve are great as long as you don't have those issues. It can really bring down inflammation, whereas Tylenol is more for pain modulation, reduces pain, not as much of the inflammation.
Okay.
And
that's
thing,
acetaminophen, right?
Yes, acetaminophen, you're right. And when it comes to Motrin, that'd be something like ibuprofen, and then Aleve would be naproxen, and those are sort of the anti-inflammatory class. We call them non-steroidal anti-inflammatories.
Okay.
And those can work great, especially with inflammation.
Okay. All right. Great. And then beyond that, what do you do?
Sure. So, a lot of times, especially since we're dealing with sports, and I'm sure you've seen in post-game interviews, a lot of the athletes have ice. Ice can work great as well. It's really something that doesn't really cost much, doesn't have too many side effects unless you fall asleep with that ice on you, and then you have a little bit of frostbite. So we sort of limit it to about 15, 20 minutes at each time, and then give yourself about a 40-minute break. And then heat can work great as well for those aches, especially during the nighttime when you're having trouble sleeping, because an ice pack doesn't really lend itself to sleep. So really that warm heat is great. And then, in some cases, we will do injections of cortisone in certain joints, especially if that aching persists. Cortisone is basically an anti-inflammatory, but we're directly putting it into the joint. And, it can work very well in a pinch. And it isn't something you want to necessarily get all the time, but it certainly can help with symptoms. And then in the worst case scenario, sometimes we would consider, surgery, not necessarily the worst, but more of everything else is failing. And surgery can be very helpful. But again, all these things are really to deal with symptoms and the function, which we deal with arthritis. Unfortunately, there isn't really a cure to bring back cartilage. And so that's where we work on these things to help those symptoms and the function for each of those joints.
I think we're waiting for technology to catch up where you just have an injection of some gel and it just goes right in there and prevents you from having any issues. Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be great. It would definitely change the whole field that we're in, and it'd be a great change to have, especially because, you know, as great as these surgeries are, there is a bit of rehab time, and again, we're dealing with symptom and function. We're not necessarily bringing back that cartilage, and that would be sort of our holy grail in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate the information.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much for having us. And, you know, we're really happy to kind of have these forums where we get a chance to speak with you, Lisa, and also to let our patients know that Kaiser does have a lot of multidisciplinary treatments for osteoarthritis, whether it's our department or physical therapy, our primary care colleagues. We all work together to help those issues for our patients.
Excellent. Well, thank you again.
Oh, thanks again for having me.
All right. And we'll be right back after this. Our movie for today is Cars, and you can catch that at 2 p.m. with subtitles and 6 p.m. without subtitles, and that is brought to you by Harvard Eye Associates. All right, let's take a look at our weather one last time. It is pretty warm, and it's gonna just keep getting warm over the weekend. We are looking at 79-61, then 82-61, 83-62, and then we get even warmer on Monday and Tuesday with an 88-67, 92-69. If you're traveling in the state of California, temperatures look lovely. Beaches are in the 70s with overnight 60s, and the mountains are anywhere between 73 and 80 with the overnight in the 40s, and then Palm Springs is 109 and Las Vegas 107. You can join us again here tomorrow at 9 a.m. for our Saturday This Day, or you can rewatch our program at 12:30 and 5, or watch us on our YouTube channel, Village Television. Have a great Friday. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
The condominiums at the Towers in Laguna Woods Village offer 7 spacious floor plans, unforgettable views, convenient bus transportation, and a new experience in independent, carefree senior living. Our beautiful hotel-style environment offers nightly 4-course dinner service, bi-weekly housekeeping, and a wide variety of activities. Also for your convenience are 24-hour concierge, 24-hour maintenance services, and on-site management. Experience elevated living at its finest.
City of Hope is speeding cancer research and treatment to Orange County.
There are many subtypes of breast cancer within the category of breast cancer, and we are seeing new breakthroughs in the way that we apply targeted therapies. And seeing a medical oncologist with a disease-specific specialty ensures that that oncologist has the knowledge base to appropriately apply these new therapies and decide what's the best clinical trial for a patient to be enrolled in.